you guys are both just really in tune with each other, and it seems like your interpretations are just really refined and really put together. How do you guys do that as a duo? Talk about it a lot?
It's not much talking, I think.
No.
Well, on the plane, maybe in the 8 hours going back, we talk, but then when it comes to rehearsal,
Yeah, well, there's,
more playing.
I don't know, it's something that you build up little by little, and unless you have, I mean, we all have ideas on the music we play, and we share them, if we, you know, most of the times they match. My ideas and his ideas, they tend to match. Sometimes they do not, and we discuss them. And then it's a slow, gradual process of discovery. You know, you kind of build up and discover your own ideas by working on it, rather than having some strong prejudices or some strong ideas at the very beginning. So yeah, there's a lot of work together. Most of all, I think the work we've done with the duo was working together in order to achieve a common idea of the music. So we've been through over the past 6, 7, 8 years, we've been playing together so much to such an extent that we kind of came to the point where we're sharing, you know, a common solid ground of musical ideas, and that makes everything easier, you know, rather than discussing all over every time interpretation on things. So it's there's a point where I really realize that, you know, you've done a big effort and you've succeeded in achieving this common musical background, and at that point it's like talking the same language. So, you know, it's we're talking now, and it's, I mean, it's kind of easy to communicate. So this is the same thing, and then of course, you know, piece after piece, work after work, project after project, we have to redefine and reschedule somehow all the things that we want to do. But there's a common background now that makes working on music quite an easy and enjoyable experience.
Yeah. There is a review of one concert of ours. It's very beautiful, but also funny, because it says they seem to share this one brain. They seem to share the same brain, right?
It's either the same brain or one brain. It's something that's supposed to be very nice, but at the same time,
you know,
it looks like it means, you know, they split 50% of a brain each, which is, you know, it's true. It's true. It's what you tend to.
We have to say that we are sort of lucky, because I live in Switzerland, in Geneva now, and Lorenzo lives in Milan, but he teaches up in the mountains in Italy. Northwest, and so we meet for our rehearsal in the mountains, really, you know, just next to the White Mountain, and we usually have a day a week, then sometimes we get together even longer. And I would say that we try to do this, we read the music first without having been practicing it before. We read the music a little bit, and we sort of start finding a way for the two of us. Then we go back and we start practicing, and back again. We make a few decisions, but we really try to play and to listen. And as I said before, we decided to play together because it was very natural and very easy. So, but sometimes, for example, in my other duo experience, we were also younger, with less experience, and we were really making a lot of discussion, planning, and do this, that, you know, a little bit of this, that. In our duo, it's there is some, I don't know, some chemistry that makes it easier to listen and understand each other. So process is more listening and playing the music than discussing.
Stick with the interpretation thing for a little bit. When I saw your masterclass, I think talked quite a bit about that stuff, and I was wondering if you had any tips for people that are trying to get their interpretation skills going for pieces and things like that.
Well, you know, this is like it's like when people who want to become writers ask for tips on how they can become writers, and the advice is usually yeah, and the advice that they get is usually, I mean, you cannot write if you haven't read other people's things, and the advice would probably be the same. I would say, you know, before struggling to look for your own interpretation, I think you should first try to get as an idea that is as wide as possible on what, you know, what other people has done. Not only that, but also to be aware of stylistical problems, you know, and so you should try to listen to as much music as you can, and
Also for other instruments.
yeah.
For guitar first, and then to extend. Yeah.
That's so the listening is the first thing that one should do when he's trying to make up his own interpretative ideas.
Yeah.
There is that. There's you know, there's a work of survey of the piece that you want to play. There's a work that you do to absorb the music that you're playing. So work of analysis of the piece. You have to really know the piece not only, you know, not only as a series of fingers that you put on the fingerboard, or as a series of finger combinations for the right hand, but really, you know, that the piece itself is like a tale, or it's like a path. It's like some kind of story that develops, and where the music is going, which one is the direction. You know, there's always sometimes, you know, the main problem. There are more subtle problems related to stylistical things, right? So you cannot really play vast music if you don't have at least an idea of how that music is played. You cannot play, let's say, early 19th century music related to vocal models, such as most of Giuliani's music, if you don't have an idea of what, you know, that type of music would sound like. So if you don't listen to Rossini, it's really hard to understand how to play some Giuliani's, let's say, variations. But most of all, sometimes you really see that the music isn't going anywhere. You know, that's the main thing. So that's the main thing that we try to explain, or at least to share. Not really to explain, because we don't have much to explain, but what we can share is that our idea is that the music is like a conversation between you and me. I mean, I'm trying to go somewhere with my speech, as you're trying to go somewhere with your questions, and that's the music is exactly the same thing. It is always going somewhere. It's moving towards a state of tension, or it's moving towards a state of relaxation. You know, is disappearing, is coming back, is fading away. So all these things really make music live. Otherwise, it would be just a dead thing. So interpretation is a combination of knowledge that comes from knowing, you know, as much music as you can, and listening to other people's playing, and your own research of the direction into music, you know, research of the reasons why the music was there. There's always a reason why a composer wrote a single note, not only a piece, just a single note. And you know, the listener, the audience, your audience wants to know. He's sitting there, he's listening to you, but you must justify every single note that you play. You know, every single note you play has to make sense. You cannot just play a series of notes and say, "Oh, ain't this a pretty little tune?" No, you know, it's not like that. They really need to know. If you play two measures, there are two measures that are the same. They cannot be there, you know, just because he wrote one measure and then he wrote another one. Let's write another one that is the same. No, there are two measures that look the same, but they surely have different meanings.
Yeah. And speaking about this, one very simple tip to start would be also to really read scores, because many times the students forget after a while. You know, you memorize, and then the score is in the back and you just play by heart and you try to make it more consistent. And then you ask them, so what tempo is this? Is it andante? Is it allegro? Is it, oh, I don't remember it. Or well, there is a piano. Why you're just keeping playing forte? So the score is really a friend that we need always, even if we got the piece memorized, to have it there and make sure that we start from the composer's idea. So then at some point we can also make some changements if we really don't get what is written. But this would be something simple, because sometimes in the lesson I just find myself saying, but have you seen this is piano and then it goes crescendo, then it's forte. It's great, it makes more sense. But it's written there. It was you could have done it, on your own. So this is something simple that everybody can do carefully, really looking at the score. And it can be interesting also to listen to some other music, violin, piano. Piano, for example, is quite simple with the scores, and try to understand what's going on in the interpretation. So like Lorenzo was saying, listening and being able to have a concentration through a long piece before we try to propose a long piece to another.
And it's funny, the closer we come to our modern times, and the more true this is. I mean, we in a way, the 20th century meant the freedom from all the rules, but never in the history of music as much as in the 20th century. The composer really wrote everything he meant on the score. So if you do, we've been playing now for years in an early music ensemble where we play the theorbo, the baroque guitars, and we do a lot of 17th century instrumental music for those early plucked instruments, and a lot of vocal music too with a singer. And now we're working on a Alessandro Scarlatti project. And that's a time of the history of music where very little is written on the score, such as, for instance, if you read a jazz standards book, and you will find nothing on the right. You barely find the notes, but not really the rhythm, the chord, a few chords, few scattered chords. But that's in 17th century and 18th century music, early 18th century music, very little is written on score. Very little of what you're playing is written down. But then, as we approach we go through the classical age, and then the romantic time, and then the 20th century, the notation becomes more and more precise. And so, again, if you play, we're talking about Tedesco a lot of times. If you play Tedesco's Preludes and Fugues or any other of his music, you'll find that everything is written on the score, which, as I know this may sound like a paradox, but which doesn't mean that you don't have the freedom to make up your own interpretation. It just means that you have the freedom. I mean, you feel free to create your own interpretation, but you have to stick to the rules that he sets, and which is in a way is more challenging, because there's apparently you're moving in a smaller field, and so it's nice. I think that the thing that Stanley said, 90% of the work is saying things that are repeating things that are written down. That's very true.
Well, especially when you play great music by a great composer, there is a very strong idea behind the score that you are looking. So it's not just, okay, here is the music. For example, again, Casanova Tedesco, you get that he knew what he was doing, and he had a very clear idea of how the music would sound. So it's important to start from there, trying to discover what is behind that, and then of course it becomes very wide, the knowledge that you need to have.
What do you guys do?